Hello everyone, welcome. Welcome to the 2016 end of the year honors thesis presentation in the Department of Anthropology and our awards ceremony. This is something that our department started doing last year. This is the second year we do this in this format. I'm very excited to be welcoming you. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies for Anthropology. My name is Caterina Semendeferi. I'm a professor for the major of Biological Anthropology. So it is my great pleasure to invite all of you. I would like to draw your attention to a couple of things. We are recording this event so that we can put it on YouTube and into our website for friends and family and alumni to watch. So please be mindful of the sound. Please be mindful of entering or exiting the room. The way we structure the event is as follows. We're going to start with the honors thesis presentations by our 4 students. So the first hour and 10 to 15 minutes is going to be devoted to that. And then we have another 30 to 40 minutes for the award ceremony. After that, we invite everyone to join us upstairs for a reception. So please stay with us to enjoy some food and drinks to celebrate the end of the year. Unless there are some questions or any issues, I am going to introduce the program. So we have our 4 students listed up there with the titles of their work and their honors thesis. And I would like to invite the first student, Isabel, to come up here and give us a presentation. At the end of her presentation, feel free to ask questions. We will have time to address a couple of questions. So, Isabel, please come over. I'm opening your presentation for you. And here you are.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I would like to first thank you all for coming out. It means a lot to have you guys come here and see our presentations. My name is Isabel Hermsmeyer. I represent Biological Anthropology. I'm in the Biological Anthropology major, and my advisor is Margaret Schoeninger. And my presentation today is going to be covering the peculiar diet of Paranthropus boisei and an investigation of the gelada baboon as a model.
Isabel, please make sure that you are seen by the camera. So.
Okay. All right, so I went about this because I'm very interested in understanding hominin evolution and the ways that we have adapted over the years in order to survive, in order to persevere. So I decided to look into past species of hominins that are not present today. And so throughout my presentation, I will be going over an introduction of Paranthropus boisei, who is the main focus of my presentation. Research on diet in Paranthropus boisei, as it is a highlight of this particular species. The gelada baboon, as they have been proposed to be a model, potential modern analog for this species. I'm going to be comparing their morphological traits as well as other dietary indicators to see whether or not they make a good model. And then I will come to my conclusions. All right, so Paranthropus boisei is an ancient hominin species that lived 2.5 to 1.3 million years ago in eastern Africa. They occupied open habitats near water, and they shared their range both geographically and temporally with 3 other hominin species. Well, here on this graph we have 4 listed. As you can see, Paranthropus boisei is the furthest right in the middle, and they shared their time range with Paranthropus robustus, Homo habilis, with the branching off of Homo rudolfensis, Homo ergaster, as well as early Homo erectus. And this would tell us that since there are so many hominin species present at that time, that there was likely a decent amount of competition between them if they were all adapted to similar niches. So it would make logical sense if one or multiple were to adapt in a different way in order to occupy a different dietary niche. And we see in Paranthropus boisei extremely specialized craniodental morphology. And craniodental morphology applies to the way that your teeth are structured, the way that your jaw, your mandible is structured, muscle attachments for eating. So this could tell us that they possibly adapted in a different way in order to survive. And they were around for over 1 million years, so that tells us that they were successful in that regard for a time. All right, so diet of Paranthropus boisei. So as you can see, we have this skull here. They have these huge mandibles, very large zygomatic crusts that are for muscle attachments for eating, very large flat molars. And when this species was discovered, all of these extremely large, robust features were initially believed to be adaptations to a very hard diet. And so they were nicknamed the Nutcracker Man. They thought they were eating hard things like nuts, tubers, and hard fruits even. But recent data, both in microwear and stable isotope analysis, chemical analysis, have shown this to not be true. This recent research shows that Paranthropus boisei was actually likely a grass-eating species. Now, this is extremely peculiar for a primate species. We usually eat things like leaves, fruits, occasionally proteins like insects or other animals. So this is a very rare diet, mostly seen in grazing-type animals like cows or horses. So this was alarming. And one of the ways that we like to study extinct species is by seeing if there are any modern living species that could potentially make an appropriate analog for them, so that we can make inferences on behavior, on soft tissue morphology. And so when we found out that Paranthropus boisei was likely eating grasses, we looked to see if there were any living primates that were also eating grasses. And there is in fact one, and it's the grass-eating gelada baboon. Now, the gelada baboon is a large cercopithecine in the Ethiopian highlands, and again, it is the only living grass-eating primate. They are very geographically isolated and in the very, very highlands where it's very wet, and they are seen to eat grasses. Some populations eat grasses and sedges. Some bring in some additional flowers or herbs, but they're essentially a grass-eating primate. Now, this gelada baboon has been proposed to be a model by different researchers for Paranthropus boisei because of this dietary adaptation. However, in my project, I decided to look into whether or not this was a valid suggestion. So I decided that I would look into comparing the two species to see if we could go forth with the idea that gelada baboon makes an adequate model for Paranthropus boisei. So when I went about trying to answer this question, I decided to pick a few dietary indicators to compare between the two species, to see if they matched up, if they were different, if they were similar, how they were different and similar. And the first of these dietary indicators that I selected to compare was body size. Body size can tell us a lot about the diet of a species, as it tells us caloric intake. The larger you are, the higher amount of calories you're going to need. The smaller you are, the fewer. It can also tell us about things like the size of your digestive tract. And in general, the larger you are, while you do need higher caloric intake, that caloric intake can be of lower quality overall. Whereas when you're smaller, due to your smaller digestive tract, you have to eat smaller amounts of food, so they should be higher quality. The second dietary indicator that I decided to look at was craniodental morphology. And again, this is the structure of your dentition, of your muscle attachments for eating, your mandible, your skull overall. And then I decided to look at microwear. While craniodental morphology can tell us about what they might have been eating based off of the structure, microwear actually are little scratches left on the teeth of what they actually did eat. So these can be seen through microscopes, and they can be compared to infer about the mechanical properties of what that species was eating. And the fourth was chemical analysis. Chemical analysis, stable isotope analysis, can tell us about what types of plant foods these herbivorous mammals may have been eating. So first, body size. Paranthropus boisei is somewhat smaller than we are, but around a similar size to chimpanzees, about 129.5 centimeters or 4'3". They were bipedal hominin, and they weighed around 42 kilograms or 92.5 pounds. Whereas the Theropithecus gelada weighs in at 14.75 kilograms, and they are around 2 feet long from head to the base of their tail. So this is the sexes are averaged for both of these species, as the females and the males are very different in size. But on average, you can see that the gelato baboon is around half the size of Paranthropus boisei. So here we already have a very extreme difference. This tells us that the quality of the diet that the gelato baboon eats should be higher in general, and and Paranthropus boisei's diet could have been lower quality because of their body size and the larger size of their digestive tract. Second is craniodental morphology. Paranthropus boisei is the image up top, and the Therapithecus gelata is the image on the bottom. Paranthropus boisei seem to have very small frontal teeth, including small incisors and small canines, and extremely large and flat molars, which are conducive to grinding and grinding of the food that they eat. Whereas Therapithecus gelata is again seen to be very different in that they have very large canines, which, since we can do observations of them as they are living, we are seen to be used for displays, and very high-crowned molars. These high-crowned molars are designed to shred the foods that they eat, and they're actually an adaptation that is seen in other grass-eating animals like deer in order to best process their foods. So again, we have a very clear difference between the craniodental morphology of these two species, where one is small frontal teeth with large flat back teeth, and the other has large canines and high-crowned, not flat molars. So again, this can tell us that they are likely eating different things as their dentition is adapted in such clear different ways. Microware actually is the most similar of the four that I looked at. They are both seen to have fine striations, and they lacked pitting. Pitting is something that can happen when hard bits get into your are in your food or get into what you're eating, and they can leave large pits on your teeth. They both lack a good amount of pitting, but gelatas seem to have a bit more. Paranthropus boisei has moderate directionality, but for the most part they are not very uniform and in different directions. As you can see from this picture, we have some diagonal lines up above, whereas Therapithecus gelata is very straight and even. So since from the fine striations and the lack of a large amount of pits, we can infer that they might have been eating similar foods in regards to mechanical properties, but may have been processing them in a different direction, a different way. And then finally, stable isotope analysis. Now, stable isotope analysis, we're looking at carbon here, and this can be taken from bone, this can be taken from dentition. Stable isotope analysis has shown to be a very accurate way of assessing the quality and the plant types that an herbivorous mammal is eating. And we can use this method of analysis millions and millions of years into the past. So it stands true. We can look at it from Paranthropus boisei, and we can look at it for living species. So even though they're both eating grasses, Therapithecus gelata falls into the C3 type of plants, which are generally a bit more high quality, more leaf types, fruit types, whereas Paranthropus boisei falls into the C4 type of plants, which are heavily grasses and lower quality, can grow in areas with less water, lowlands, whereas these C3 grasses are in the highlands, so they have more access to water, they're higher quality in general. So from this, we can also see that while they're both likely eating grasses, for Paranthropus boisei likely, but with Therapithecus gelata it's known that they're eating grasses, these grasses are very different in terms of quality and nutrition that they're getting out of them. So in conclusion, I found that from the four traits that I decided to look at from four different dietary indicators, body size, craniodental morphology, and isotopic signature are all quite dissimilar. And only their microware is similar, and even then there are still some dissimilarities. And out of these four comparisons, while there are room for more, these suggest that the gelata does not make a particularly viable model for Paranthropus boisei. Are there any questions? Yes?
That was an excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just wondering what comparisons you could make for the environment of the ecological context
Right.
for gelatas and trend?
Yes,
Can you
that's
repeat the question?
okay. Sure. The question was, what kinds of comparisons can be made based on the environment that the two species were living in? That's actually something that I'm delving more into now, post the writing of my thesis, and those include that the gelada are in very, very high elevations, whereas Paranthropus boisei is believed to have been in lowland grassland areas. So there's a very stark difference between the two there, as well as the gelada have to deal with human encroachment. So there are farmlands in the gelada habitat. So that's another factor that has to be taken into account as human activities pushing them out of their natural environment, whereas Paranthropus boisei wouldn't have had to deal with that. So those are things I can look into. Yes?
So I know you mentioned that the gelada was a viable model because it's the only living species that eats grass.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any possible viable models that you've encountered that would work for Paranthropus boisei?
There is actually one, funnily enough. It's an ancestor to Therapithecus gelada. It's Therapithecus oswaldi. They're also believed to have been a grass-eating species, but they do actually have a C4 signature. So that is another species to be looked into, but again, this is a species that is extinct. So we can look at them to see if there are any ways that they're similar, any ways they might have adapted to the same C4 grass type of diet. But in terms of a living model, other than gelada, the gelada baboon, I have not found anything. Yes?
So I know you were comparing like the body size of both boisei and
Gelada.
Did you find like as far as like sexual dimorphism between the two, like kind of piggybacking on the environment question, was there an abundance of that specific type of grass maybe in the environment before that like led to that sexual dimorphism where there was more competition or less? Like based on the abundance of the grass itself in the environment?
Well, the grasses in both of the environments, both in the lowland and the highland, is very abundant. Grasses in general are a very abundant food source. So I wouldn't make a direct link to, they both are equally sexually dimorphic, where the females are about 2/3 the size of the males. But I haven't thought to link the two. That's a good question.
It'd be hard to see.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Leave it to my colleague Alexis Reed. Thank you very much.
Alright, so hello everyone, my name is Alexis Reed, and I will be presenting my thesis titled Female Anime Characters Demonstrate the Shifting Attitudes Gender Roles in Japan. And I did this under the guidance of Professor Christina Turner. And so for those of you who don't know what anime is a form of Japanese animation that appeals to a wide variety of audiences ranging from different ages and genders. I first got interested in anime when I was a little girl with the influence of both Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z. And so it was a great introduction to Japanese culture for me as a child. But what makes anime interesting for a study is because it's so wide and so transnational in it examines different issues that occur in Japanese society, such as gender. But again, the popularity of it too allows it to have a wider reach for people. And so it's not just people in Japan who experience anime, it's people in countries like Germany, Guatemala, El Salvador, China, Korea, so it's everywhere. For my research question, I asked, what does the action and agency of women and girls in Japanese anime reveal about the shifting attitudes towards women today in Japanese society? And I was interested in this question because of a couple of research projects that I did with McNair, and where I interviewed fans of anime, and they explained that anime had a very significant appeal in their lives. It was something that they really loved, and it was appealing to them. Furthermore, some of the literature that I have read on gender roles paralleled the themes and characters that are analyzed in academic sources. So for the structure of my thesis, I have a total of 7 chapters, but for this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the arguments in chapters 3, 4, and 6. And so for my arguments, for chapters 3, the argument is women are depicted as coping with shifting gender roles by resisting them. That physical appearance delivers the same message about shifting gender roles that narrative and dialogue do, in that women are depicted as modifying gender roles to make do in a gendered world. And so with my methodology, it was primarily library research, and so I read 15 books, more than 20 academic journals or articles. I used analysis of noted scholars in the field, my own analysis, and analysis of animated films and TV series. And so these are the different films and anime series that I utilized because they have extensive and widespread Japanese viewership as well as other different types of viewership, and they address complex issues that makes them appealing to both young generations and old generations. They're also these anime are also the most highly translated of them all of the series right now. And so some of the series, again, some of their visuals would be Sailor Moon R the Movie, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, Princess Mononoke, Inuyasha the Final Act, Sailor Moon the series, and Full Metal Alchemist the original series. And so again, one of the reasons why I chose 3 of these films by Hayao Miyazaki is because he has a tendency to draw very empowered female characters. And the other series that I took a look at, these are all series that have been created by female directors and anime artists. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be looking at Sailor Moon R the Movie, the series itself, Princess Mononoke, and Kiki's Delivery Service. And so before I delve into the fun part of that presentation, just a little bit of background on the political and legal changes in Japan concerning employment. And so there are important gender role policies and social changes prior to the 1980s, but for this, that I do address in my thesis, but for this presentation, I'm going to be taking a look at the ones that occur in the 1980s onward. And so one of the political changes that happened in Japan concerning employment was CEDAW, which is the Convention of the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which was ratified in 1980 and was responsible for implementing gender equality in the workplace. I also took a look at the Equal Employment Opportunity Law, which was passed in 1986, which provided women with equal access to jobs with salaries equal to those of men as well. And I also took a look at the revision of the Labor Standards Law in 1998. And so the Labor Standards Law, which was passed, it placed restrictions on women of doing overtime and other dangerous work, or other work considered dangerous to women. With the revision of the Labor Standards Law in 1998, it removed those restrictions. So now women could work overtime and could do jobs that were technically considered dangerous to women in their health. I also took a look at political and legal changes concerning family work. And so in 1992, 2 new child care leave laws were passed. And so these child care leave laws, they permitted either parent to take up to a year's worth of leave following the birth of a child, so the mother could take time off or the father could take time off. It also guaranteed pay up to 25% of their salary during that year. And then the Angel Plan was also passed in 1994. And so this was a plan that encouraged a balance between work and home life for women. So it also encouraged more daycare centers to pop up for them. Also provided funding for child rearing support. And they placed these child centers near specific locations, specifically train stations, so that way a mother can commute to work without having to go out of her way of going across the city to drop her child off at a daycare center. Instead, she could, on her way to work, drop the child off, take the train, go to work, on her way back, pick the child up and head home. There was no difficulty for the mom to pick up and leave her child. I also want to talk about gender and social change that was going on in Japan at the time. And so second wave feminism happened in the 1970s, and this gave young women they wanted work that defined them more as people, instead of just something that was, your job is to stay at home and raise the children. Because during this time, women, they were expected to go into the job force, but they were also expected to have families. And once they had the family, then they were to return to the home until their last child was fully enrolled in school. Then they could return back to work only based on their family's needs. And so second wave feminism gave these women more of an image to rally behind, of something that you don't have to do what it is that you're expected to do. You can go out and do work that is more defining to your character and to who you are as a person. And so in 1972, 80% of young women preferred to be married, whereas in 1990, 40% of women said it was better to be unmarried than married. And so this reflection of attitude, we could see it start changing in the late 1970s, and it could also be seen shifting in Japanese media. And so I wanted to give you guys kind of an idea of what type of anime was available to women before the 1980s. And it's anime like Maho Sukai Chappie and The Rose of Versailles. And these anime, they're very stereotypical anime in which the female characters in these anime, they were more dependent on the man and the family. And so it wasn't very much for women to rally behind, especially if we take a look at the superhero genre in anime, which was Tetsuwan Atoma, which you guys might know as Astro Boy, and Akira, as well as Dragon Ball Z and Mobile Suit Gundam. And so one of the frameworks that I used for a significant portion of my thesis was Ian Condry's idea of a generative platform. And so Ian Condry, he claims that anime is a generative platform that the artists use to get the audience to think about their own potential. And so these artists, they create characters that are just as important as the narratives in which they exist. And so characters are seen in terms of their tension and the ways they shape the worlds in which they move. And so one of the anime that I'm going to be talking about was created in 1994 by Naoko Takeuchi. And so she introduced a new type of superhero for women. She was a superhero that was intended to be a role model and a big sister for young girls and for women, and it's one of the most successful anime ever made. And so Sailor Moon debuted in 1994. And what Takeuchi, she is the first female anime artist and director to create such a superhero for young women. And she says that her goal was to allow girls to do things that they were not allowed to, that they weren't permitted to do beforehand. And so her goal was really to try and change gender roles, the idea of gender roles for children. And so Sailor Moon, again, one of the most successful anime in history, it overturns many gender role constraints because she resists easy generalizations, and she's not trying to be like a man in any way or shape or form. And so she's trying to be like a girl who's powerful. And so the Sailor Moon and Sailor Scouts, they act as a generative platform because they allow people to think about their own potential and what they're capable of, as well as they're kind of a way of having people view a variety of things that people do in their own lives. So when they're not transformed into their Super Sailor Scout uniforms, they're just ordinary people, where they hang out with their family and their friends and talk about boys, and they gossip and they play sports. And so it allows people to view them as, you can go on about in your ordinary life, but you can also be more than just blah. And so one of the ways that Takeuchi does thing is she also created a team of Sailor Scouts, as you can see here. And so this team, they were perfect visions of a newfound idea of freedom for women in Japan. And so Takeuchi, what she wanted to do is she wanted to create women that had the same abilities and capabilities of men without women having to sacrifice their femininity. And so one of the ways that she helps with, or one of the ways that these characters resist gender norms and gender hierarchies and gender roles, is she made these women fighters. And so these women are fighting not because all the men are dead and they have to, or they're disguised and they want to. No, they fight as women and they let people know they're women. And so Sailor Moon is as resolute and fierce as any male superhero. She is also a reversal of the standard rescue scenario where it's the female being rescued by the man, as I'll talk about in a few moments. And she's also a female who triumphs in the end and saves the world. And so Sailor Moon is resisting vulnerability, especially seen in Sailor Moon R, the movie, where Tuxedo Mask here has to be rescued by Sailor Moon. And so Sailor Moon is the knight in shining uniform. Tuxedo Mask is the damsel in distress. Sailor Moon gives her life to save the world, and Tuxedo Mask is left to cry over her death. And so, again, Sailor Moon, she was intended to be a moral model and a big sister, and she was also sharing traits and characteristics that are normally kind of masculine, such as a leadership position, and she leads the Scouts very well. I also took a look at the other Sailor Scouts, Sailor Mars and Sailor Mercury, and so Mercury, she is highly intelligent, she is good at math and science, she's a technology whiz, and she's also empathetic. Sailor Mars, on the other hand, is kind of a take charge kind of attitude. She playfully mocks or scolds others, and when necessary, she'll take control from Sailor Moon herself. Sailor Jupiter, she is incredibly athletic. She loves sports, and she's physically the strongest out of all of the Scouts. She can manipulate lightning, which is a very dangerous element, and normally in mythology, is normally males who we see manipulating lightning, and so this characteristic has been attributed to Jupiter herself, and she's also a really good chef. Sailor Venus, she uses her femininity as a weapon, and so one of the things that she wields is a whip, and it's very feminine in nature. When you look at it, it glows, it's made of hearts, and it's all around just cute. But when she wields it, it's actually pretty much a destructive force, because the moment it makes contact with her enemy, it obliterates them. And so it's deceptively cute. Next, I'm going to talk about appearance and strength of female characters in Princess Mononoke, which was directed by Hayao Miyazaki. And two of the characters I'm taking a look at is Lady Eboshi, who you see here, and San, who I'll present in the next slide. And so when we take a look at Lady Eboshi, her body language is very tall and proud. And have you not ever seen Princess Mononoke? If I had thrown this image up without giving you guys any context and put her in a group of women from this movie, you would be able to tell that this is a woman who is in charge. And she also rarely displays her facial expressions, but when she does, they're usually ones of dominance, as you can see here, as she's actually looking down on a man who has come to Iron Town. And so Lady Eboshi, she's a positive representation of women's authority. In the movie, she, in a way, kind of dismisses the importance of the Emperor by really not adhering to what he wants. She's more focused on what she needs to do in order to advance the progress of Irontown. She could care less if the Emperor is crying about immortality and how am I going to get the forest spirit's head and how am I going to remain forever young. Doesn't care about that. And so Miyazaki, he uses female characters normally, they're in historical dramas, are used for vehicles for tradition, so they're kind of the support system to the main lead. With Miyazaki, he defamiliarizes this notion with San and Eboshi, and so defamiliarization is a technique of taking something familiar, in this instance a woman, and kind of attributing familiar aspects such as powership and leadership and putting them onto this woman in order to kind of highlight something that the artist wants to draw attention to. I'm also going to talk about anime eyes because they're very predominant in anime. They're favorites, discussion among many people. And so round-shaped eyes, as you can see here, they convey a sense of vulnerability and softness and innocence. But if we take a look at Lady Eboshi's eyes, they're more almond-shaped, and they're more analytical looking. And if we take a look at Sand's eyes, while she does have a little bit of the roundness to them, they're not as fully round as you see here. In Sand's eyes, we can still see this determination and wariness compared to those anime eyes that are like, I trust you. I don't know you, but I trust you. Next, I'm talking about modifying gender roles to make do in Kiki's delivery service, which was also directed by Hayao Miyazaki. And so, Kiki's Delivery Service is a coming-of-age story where a girl, rather than a boy, is leaving home. And so what this film suggests is that girls can be successful by adopting in a gendered world. And so Kiki made do by utilizing the resources that were around her, and she creates self-sufficiency by building a successful business. And so some of the traits that are normally assigned to boys, such as autonomy, competence, and ability to plan, these have all been assigned to Kiki. So for autonomy, she leaves a small town to go to a large city, and I found a picture that kind of conveys just how large the city is that she's left herself to. And again, she's only 13 years old, and she's leaving by herself, which is again something that is not something that girls do. It's mainly men or boys who leave the home, but Kiki's done it herself, to be by herself, to prove herself. And so, again, she's leaving her family and her friends a safety net, something that she can rely upon and fall back onto in hard times, and she willingly leaves that. And she buys her own apartment, kind of. It's given to her, she has to work for it. But again, that idea of autonomy is there. She's living by herself in a city where she knows no one, but she's making do. In the movie, Kiki meets a boy that is, she's more competent than he ever is. And so, again, Kiki, she left her parents, but the boy still resides at home and is dependent on his own parents. Kiki is more organized and she has it together, whereas he's very, very ditzy. And another thing about Kiki is her ability to plan. And so she left on the full moon and a clear sky. And so why she decided to do that is because according to witches' lore and tradition, it's best to leave on a full moon and a clear sky. And so she has a little radio that she was constantly listening to find out what the weather would be like so she could plan on leaving that day. She also takes what she needs for her trip. So again, she's leaving her home in safety for another place. So she's not going to take everything with her. She plans on just taking what she needs in order to get by in the city until she can build up her own type of economic security, and that way she can secure herself in the society that she'll be living in. And she knows she's not that great of a witch, but she knows she's a really, really good flyer. And so she plans a successful delivery business around her flying abilities. And again, she makes do by utilizing the resources around her, and one of those are brooms. And she's able to use brooms of various kinds to get around and deliver packages and goods all over across the large city that she's living in. And so Mary Do, I know I talked a lot about this concept of making do, and so Mary White has created this concept where women, men, families are creating lives that don't match up to idealized gender roles. And in these fantasy worlds that these anime artists have created, they have presented another way of representing different gender roles themselves. And so girls, they can make their way in a perfect world by sometimes doing things that are not assigned to their own gender roles, or to their gender. And so Kiki she corresponds to a time where an increasing number of women and girls are delaying marriage or not getting married at all. And women during this time, they're gaining more economic independence, and they're focusing less on performing their gender roles. And so in conclusion, female characters, they're depicted as empowered individuals, and women are being depicted as capable of living and succeeding in the public sphere. And before we end, I analyzed a lot of anime, and one of the anime that I wanted to end with is a series called Death Note, because it provides an array of characters ranging from traditional up to late 20th century styles, as you can see here. And so really what this picture helps demonstrate is that one role is not being completely replaced by another. Instead, new roles are being created. Thank you. And I would like to thank Professor Christina Turner very much. My anthropology cohort and my Japan 190 class cohort. Questions? Joe?
Alexis, thank you so much for that. You used Ian Kanji's notion of platforms to talk about the generative possibilities that the anime might have for their audiences. I was wondering if you could tell us what you know about the audiences about the anime and if they've changed over time or what you know about the who's watching this.
I can definitely answer that question because I myself am a hardcore anime fan. And so the range of audience has not changed. It's still very much from children from 5 years of age up to people of 60 years of age. It's, again, it appeals to a wide variety of ages and genders. Yeah, myself have grown up with it since I was 7, 22, and I'm still loving every moment of it. Anyone else?
I know in the 70s you were saying, or was it 70s or 80s, where that the female characters were very reliant on the male characters. After that transition happened, did your research at all look at like a spike in sales figures as far as merchandising for like kids that play with toys? If there was any correlation between when sort of the spike, people were more inclined to like buy those types of. Because I know that it's a huge culture as far as like having the merchandising, collectibility, and memorabilia and stuff like that.
I didn't focus too much on it, but I did read some that figure sales for like Sailor Moon had gone up, but it wasn't just like girls buying it; it was also boys buying it too. So yeah, I
did. Like representing like the whole society. I know like the brony culture is a very different kind of thing, right? But I feel like it has some sort of correlation to as far as gender roles in society and how they're differentiating between being represented in artistic avenues like anime. It's interesting.
Yes.
I was wondering if any studies have been done to look at how women are sort of receiving anime, whether they're actually saying that it influences them. I mean, it's a little bit of a danger looking at popular culture and saying, well, this indicates a change in society, or that gender roles are changing. So I'd be curious to know whether women actually are seeing that as an influence in their lives.
I haven't really touched up on that, but I have heard from my Japan 190 class cohort of a few women in there explaining that Sailor Moon was a big role model for them, a big sister, someone they could look up to, someone who empowered them. And for me too, is someone who empowered me, even though I'm not Japanese. But it would be something to definitely look into. So, Terrence, here we go.
Thank you, Alexis. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Terrence DeLevino. I have been working on a major in anthropological archaeology, and my advisor for my senior thesis was Professor Jeffrey Braswell. What I'm going to be presenting on today is Market Exchange Creating a Market Economy, an examination of obsidian exchange for the pre-Hispanic Maya. And just to preface it a little bit, I want to talk about a few similarities that I saw between the Maya and another Mesoamerican culture, the Aztecs, which is that for a while, archaeologists believed, based off of the information that they found through excavations and looking at written works, such as the various codexes that were uncovered, that the Aztecs had an economy that primarily functioned on tribute and to political elites, which ultimately it was proven that while there was tribute, there was also a very complex market exchange system that was going on at the same time. And from there, in similar regard, the Maya were a Central American civilization that spanned over a variety of different geographical regions, and also in their hieroglyphic texts or written works, I'm going to be using them interchangeably throughout the course of this presentation, their hieroglyphic text also had a similar lack of notation about markets, marketplaces, merchants, market exchange, instead focusing on tributation to the elites. Therefore, what I was trying to argue in my thesis is that Maya economy also functioned under a market exchange system. Before I continue on, just a brief outline of what I'm going to be covering in my presentation. I'm going to start by explaining why I think Obsidian, or why Obsidian is a good representation of a market exchange system for the Maya. From there, I'm going to cover a few case sites that I reviewed in the literature that show indicators of, at the very least, marketplace activities. From there, talk about a couple different models that reoccurred throughout my readings, and move on to my understanding of market exchange model in that context. Finishing off, I will explain social network analysis as a useful tool to gather the relevant data to understand the exchange systems as well as the results that come from it, and conclude with my final thoughts. Straight off the bat, there are plenty of different materials that could be picked that theoretically could be picked for trying to understand market exchange for the Maya. So why Obsidian? Simply put, Obsidian is found in pretty much every Maya site throughout their geographic region, yet at the same time, it's only extractable from a limited source range, specifically the highlands of southern Guatemala, which already puts an implication that there has to be at least some sort of exchange system going on in order for such a large spreading. And in addition to that, Obsidian is easily worked and manufactured into a variety of tools. A few examples would be scrapers, blades, different kinds of points, such as spear and projectile points. And as well as that, it's a very durable tool. And prior to European introduction of steel and that kind of metallurgy, most metallurgy in the Mesoamerican region was not related to production of tools, rather working of rarer metals for elite purposes such as exotic face masks, so on and so forth. For archaeologists, rather than the Maya, obsidian is a material that will preserve well in the archaeological record. This is not something that is going to degrade just by sitting in the soil, such as a fiber or cotton. In addition to that, it has a very distinct chemical signature, which allows you to trace the obsidian back to its origin point. And specifically, there are three major sources that appear throughout the Maya region in varying percentages at sites throughout the time period, which would be El Chayal, Ixtequepe, and San Martin Jilotepeque. Moving on to the case sites I examined, I tried to pick a variety of sites when I was reviewing the literature, mostly so that I could cover my bases, rather than just having a lot of sites that are from the most complex areas, such as Tikal and Karakol. I was also looking at sites that were a little smaller, wouldn't necessarily have access to the most complex systems. And in general, what I saw as a common theme was that all of these sites for their areas had large populations, which for a place like Tikal and Karakol, that makes sense. These are well-known Maya sites that obviously had large populations and controlled large amounts of land. But for some of the smaller ones, such as Chinchichmil and Buena Vista del Cayo, these are sites that, based on their geographical location, they most likely would not be able to support their own populations through their own agricultural practices alone. Rather, they would need to trade in order to obtain the supplies that they need. In addition to that, most of these sites had large plaza areas that would be did not have architectural structures that were political or ritual in nature associated with them. What that could mean is as simple as there might be temples surrounding this large plaza area, but the temples are not pointed inwards towards the plaza, meaning that it most likely functioned in a secular purpose, such as market exchange. Finally, one thing about the market plazas as well is most of them have causeways that run into them. And most of these causeways are fairly large, which would suggest that they are able to support a high flow of traffic of people to and from areas. And their termination in the causeways would indicate that there was a reason that people were visiting these areas. In summation, the aforementioned points led me to the idea that there was, at the very least, some potential market-related activities going on here. In the literature, I saw primarily two repeated models of exchange. One of them was the model of redistribution, which, simply put, is there's a political elite at a major site or center that is collecting tribute from the surrounding population, and in many cases hoarding it, but obviously some has to be redistributed back to the extracted population. In contrast to that, market exchange would be the resources do get moved to a major center, but this is not so that the elites can collect all of it and then redistribute it, but rather moving into the major center and then people visiting that major center would enable the exchange of goods based on the demands of the population. And that is what I emphasized in my thesis. Specifically, there are a few factors that I saw through the literature for the market exchange model. One is there needs to be specialized resource production occurring at the household level. And what that means is at the household level, or for the general population, there are some people who are going to be specifically dedicating their task to creating works, such as working obsidian into the tools required by the population. In addition to that, exchange, while not impossible over long distances, was more effective at the local level, and this is primarily due to the varying terrain. And in the case of obsidian, this map up here is from Raymond Sidgwis's 1976 paper on obsidian trade, and just shows you the density of artifacts at sites given in relation to how far away they are from the source center. Finally, one last variable that was mentioned is there is most likely a merchant class that helps facilitate the flow and exchange of goods between sites and regions. In the context of the Maya, local exchange networks would be predicated upon inter-town exchange dependencies. For example, Caracol's outlying plaza groups, for the most part, had specialized productions. In addition to that, there is evidence of exchange between the regions and the major sites. Again, drawing on, I believe that was Caracol, obsidian and marine shell throughout the Maya lowlands. There's obsidian and marine shell all over the Maya lowlands, but at the same time, this is only something that you're going to find along the coast and would have to be extracted by coastal sites. The one variable that was not easily proven is the existence of a merchant class, and I refer back to the hieroglyphic text / written works, where there's almost no mention of merchants. If it is, it's very small. In some cases, it's disparaging because this means that the political elite don't have control. Somebody else has control, and let's be honest, they don't want that. Anyways. Going back to obsidian, due to a limited amount of major sources coupled with distinct chemical compositions for all sources of Mesoamerican obsidian, tracking of its exchange is possible through social network analysis. And the way I understand social network analysis is it is akin to a tool for observing patterns. A little thirsty. Network analysis utilizes similarity and context between actors, also called nodes. In this case, the actors or nodes would be the sites. This utilization allows archaeologists to review relation networks between different settlements. In terms of archaeological settlements, it can use a material such as obsidian to provide a representation of the connections between individual sites. From there, you can look at these different relations and group them into a network, and those networks then can be compared amongst themselves between the different regions in order to understand the potential trade that could be going on. And ultimately, what I found through my study of social network analysis is there were highly shifting dynamics throughout the Mesoamerican time period, and these are indicated through fluctuating strengths of connectedness of regions, which I'm actually going to jump back. You'll see, not perfectly, but this general map is an explanation of webs of connection between the sites. And what I see that as is it implies that there's continuous shifts in exchange partners throughout the time period, whether it's because of whether it's because of political alliances, whether it's because of later in Maya civilization, there was a focus on use of coastal trade routes rather than inland ones, causing certain sites to lose prominence as they were bypassed. And as well as that, it indicates that a politically controlled hierarchical command economy, or more simply put, something along the lines of a redistributive model by elites, was probably tenuous at best, due to the fact that they would have to have a large amount of control of a massive area, and as seen before, trade along the varying geography of the Maya lands is relatively difficult to achieve. So in conclusion, my research, based on the study of the case sites and social network analysis, leads me to believe that there is the evidence that in addition to, there is definitely a correlation between sites and market exchange. There definitely was some sort of market exchange system occurring in the Maya economy. However, when I started out, I was thinking the Maya their economy would be completely driven by market exchange. I was not able to make that leap from they have market exchange to being primarily driven by market exchange. Rather, in the future, I would probably like to go back and review even more literature, and I'd be more likely to find that in addition to market exchange, other systems of exchange, such as redistribution and possibly other ones that I did not have the time to review, all work together in order to have a functioning economy. And before I open the floor to questions, just a few little acknowledgments. I would like to thank Professor Braswell for helping focus my topic down to what it became, which was obsidian exchange. I would also like to thank Professor Samenda Ferry for, in general, help keeping me on track and actually convincing me that despite the fact that I had this to do, that I would be able to complete a senior thesis if I just put my mind to the task. I also have to give credit to my community college professor, Brandon Lewis, who honestly got me interested in anthropological archaeology and was kind enough to lead a field school down in Belize, which got me even more interested in the Maya specifically. I have to thank the Anthem 196 class for their reviewing, for our general bitch sessions as we're trying to think, how are we going to finish this thing? How are we going to do this? And finally, a little bit of credit to UC San Diego athletics, specifically track and cross country, because even though it made this difficult, it also gave me a drive and focus that allowed me to get through this and come out somewhat relatively sane. So I'll open the floor now to any questions that people might have. Yes, Professor.
Thanks, Terrence. That was really interesting. I wonder if you could maybe talk about something in the middle between your conclusions and your introduction to the data set. You mentioned things like distance decay, with decreasing prevalence of any source of materials over space. What kind of sort of deviations from standard distance decay might point towards market versus redistribution? Is there any particular sort of distribution of source materials that countervails that basis of the model, distance decay, say market, or versus say tribute? See anything?
So to answer that question of was there any, say, aberrations in the model that would suggest that would not fit into a typical distance decay model, the answer is I would have to go back and look more. I did focus quite narrowly on obsidian, and most of the research that I did on obsidian showed that it generally fit into the model. There was some variation due to the fact that obsidian is a resource that could be easily moved as compared to a large, bulky thing such as crops and food staples. But again, I would have to go back and look into more data. Jen?
So I know that you're talking about how the market exchange model wasn't the only one that the Mayans probably used. Do you have any other examples of other models that they could possibly use?
So to answer your question of were there any other models that the Maya used aside from market exchange, a model of redistribution is still a very popular model when it comes, and this probably goes beyond Maya economy, but in general, for many civilizations, redistribution model is still quite popular, and that's part of that is probably due in part to, in the case of a large kingdom or empire, they would have a large amount of control of either subjugated or willing towns, cities, polities, etc., that would pay tribute in order to stay under their protection. One of the reasons I don't think that quite works for the Maya, aside from what I mentioned, is the Maya were in many cases, a bunch of fractured states. It was not one overarching empire such as the Aztecs. Hence, there is no one power to collect tribute from others. I would have to look into other models, though, but the two biggest ones that I saw were market exchange and redistribution. Yeah?
I know you focused a lot on obsidian, and it seems like it was more like specialized or made into various certain types of tools. So is that to say that there wasn't as much of a value on raw obsidian being exchanged, or rather, is there any correlation, like there were more weapons than kind of utilitarian things for daily life, to see like if the people that were using them for in-city stuff, or if it was like an exchange, if there was more weapons being exchanged at the time?
So your question would be, was there, since I focused more on as a utilitarian resource, would there be other examples of obsidian as a non-utilitarian resource in some ways?
Yeah, and kind of more along the lines of just initially, like, it obviously was more valuable for its use. Was there any, like, in the archaeological finds, like raw obsidian, where that say that they were manufacturing tools there, or they look at this exchange and trade coming?
Oh, okay. So was Rob City V Trader manufacturing tools as well? The answer to that would be, I think, if I remember correctly, both were being exchanged. However, you do see workshops of Obsidian not just at the final destinations, but also at source points. So I think, hypothetically, potentially, depending on what you wanted produced, certain workshops would be specialized towards making certain kinds, which would then affect whether you're trading a raw chunk of obsidian, which can be taken to a site, knocked down into a bunch of scrapers or projectile points and distributed to the populace, or if there's a specific, say, design that you want built in that's associated with the region, so it's made at the source point and then traded along.
Yeah.
Yes?
Very interesting presentation, thank you. I'm wondering if you pose this as there is a tribute redistribution model on the one hand with a market exchange model on the other. Is there any evidence that they were combined? In fact, that the elites controlled certain market exchanges or were involved in it in any way? In other words, I really like your conclusion that you don't have a conclusion that it's just this all market exchange, but rather there are other things going on. I'm just wondering if you have a hypothesis about how those two systems might interact.
Okay, so the question was, is there a way to reconcile market exchange and distributive models? And the answer actually is, in quite a few of my articles, there were sections dedicated to trying to reconcile, in what they would call reconciling this dual economy model, where they would try to knit market exchange and redistribution together. And in particular, I'm thinking of one chapter out of a book by Eleanor King that was published in 2015, where it's talking about Tikal in specific and their concept of a built market, where there is market exchange going on, but there is also this small influence of the elite, not necessarily to directly extract tribute, but put a little bit of regulation on it so that they do retain some semblance of control. So that would be something that should be researched more into for that reconciliation.
I'm just wondering, as you're talking, I mean, and this is a question I was going to ask also, is what lessons do you have for the contemporary world? Do you draw any lessons from these mixed models in the mining world to understand the economies that you see around you?
I think the answer to that would be I would have to go and think on that. Primarily my focus on this was, here's a civilization where there's a lot known, but there's also a lot that isn't known. So I want to look at it almost purely in the context of that. But that is a fair point. A lot of anthropology and a lot of other social sciences in some cases looking on things that have occurred in the past and seeing how that we could use that to manipulate, to affect, to adjust what we're doing in the present. And the answer is I'd have to think more about it. Anything else? All right. Well, I thank you for your time. And I think I'll get this set up for my good buddy Charles.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Charles Dorfan. My mentor for this project was Professor Jonathan Friedman, and the title is Exploring the Dynamism Between Politics and Education, an Examination of the University of California System. So, figuring out what is expected of a professor each quarter is straightforward. Do the readings, answer their questions in class, and turn in the assignments. Easy. But why do they assign what they assign? Okay, I'm otherizing all of you professors. but I want you to know that I know that you're people too, and in fact, I'm quite fond of many of you. It would appear to me that reading a text arguing in favor of a certain notion is as intellectually fulfilling as reading a text arguing against that notion, right? So, what is it about certain authors and their consequent ideologies that provoke the faculty here at UCSD to load up the curriculum with a particular kind of scholarship, possessing what appears to be a particular political predilection? If I can categorize the bulk of the sociocultural anthropology curriculum into a singular ideology, semantic issues notwithstanding, does the UC anthropology curriculum have an inherent agenda of a political nature? These thoughts would inform the formulation of my hypothesis when it came time to decide what to research. When I began my research on the broad topic of politics and education, I encountered two studies that would eventually contextualize my hypothesis. In one very ambitious study of universities across the United States, which reported on many aspects of higher education, not just the politics of their faculties, it was reported that the majority of all faculty members self-identify as left-wing. This trend is exaggerated in the social sciences and the humanities. Right, I know. I was fortunate to come across a report on the University of California system as well, whose findings were focused specifically on all things political. This study of the University of California was no exception to the aforementioned study involving universities across the country. In fact, it was found that among social science faculty, virtually all UC professors identified as left-wing. It reported a ratio of 28-to-1 left-wing, right-wing. So I hypothesized. If pedagogy in the social sciences has the potential to be one-sided, perhaps politically biased education is detrimental. So, if locating politics. If politics is that small, locating politics, it occurred to me that if I would investigate such a question, I ought to be sure what precisely I was talking about. Hence, defining politics would be my first undertaking. But the definition of what politics is depends on where we perceive its presence. As I would discover, defining or even categorizing politics as one fixture of human interactions or another was both a complex and controversial task in the field of social anthropology. I will outline two different ways that anthropologists and other social theorists have proposed to categorize where politics reside in our lives. The first way looks at politics as a small and discrete category. Michael Oakeshaw compared politics to other vocations and activities, like banking or horseback riding. Kind of weird, right? Likewise, Edward Evans Pritchard saw politics as an optional or at least non-essential aspect of human life. Evans Pritchard went so far as to identify people among the Igbo of Nigeria who he saw as non-political persons. The second way that we can categorize politics represents an extreme departure from the first. It is also more in vogue among anthropologists and is arguably a more sensible way to approach the topic. This would see politics as pervading each and every human interaction. Here we would see politics as manifested everywhere, in power imbalances between two people having a conversation, in how an institution, like a university or a church or other corporate body, chooses to constitute itself, or in what we eat, in which clothes we dress ourselves in. Taking this conceptualization to its extreme, as scholars commonly do today, all reality becomes a political reality. Defining politics. If politics is a small and discrete category, akin to going horseback riding, we need not problematize the political orientation of the university faculty. Giving these professors the benefit of the doubt, we could believe that their own beliefs do not interfere with what they teach. But if one's politics become reified in every thought and action, it is reasonable to argue that one's pedagogy is affected at a fundamental level. Based on what I read, I made the decision to regard politics as that pervasive category that manifests as a bias that informs a subject's ideology and outlook. That is not to say it was the only choice, let alone the correct choice. Nonetheless, the history of academic discourse in the social sciences and in higher education indicates that important canonical scholars have been motivated by a particular political outlook. Education did not wake up one morning with a political bias and a raging headache. Rather, politically affected pedagogy has a long history and a rich intellectual tradition. A large component of my research was analyzing the history of scholarship that concerned itself with problematizing the status quo. Likewise, I perceived contemporary curriculums doing that as well. In fact, a portion of this research project was devoted to analyzing the discursive environment of one such class within the anthropology major's upper division course sequence courses. Today, though, we call that scholarship that problematizes society and prior intellectual conventions critical theory. But the tradition predates that description. Some scholars have proposed that critical theory stems from the earliest critics of the ancient regime, like Maximilian Robespierre, or with Karl Marx's polemics against the bourgeoisie. For my purposes of analyzing politics in higher education, I began my chronology with the Frankfurt School and its influences upon postmodern understandings of society and truth. The Frankfurt School would eventually give way to discourses that deal with the topics that comprise higher education in the social sciences. The studies of globalization, colonization, racism, and sexism, to name a few, are largely born from this intellectual tradition. The Frankfurt School was founded in the 1920s in Frankfurt, Germany, by a group of Jewish men who were informed in their thinking by the likes of Karl Marx, Kant, Hegel, Weber, and in response to the rising anti-Semitism, they eventually fled to Columbia University in New York City, where they criticized Anglo-American social scientists for being too empirical. The Germans were also quick to point out hypocrisies they deemed endemic in many American institutions. One example was the flagrant racism that seemed to border Columbia University in and around Harlem, which contrasted with America's espoused emphasis on inalienable rights and equality. The scholars in the Frankfurt School were voracious critics, and no topic was left unturned and dissected. Scholars of critical theory, like David Held and others, have commented that the intellectuals within the Frankfurt School were not content outlining how society was. Rather, their objective was to dissect current social institutions so that a better reality could be elucidated. A student of the Frankfurt School, and later a founding scholar of our university, Herbert Marcuse, would popularize the concept of utopia during the 1960s. Marcuse brought the Frankfurt School's pedagogy to mainstream American consciousness, popularizing the German tradition among American academics. By criticizing a civilization for its faults, a more equitable, or whatever the criteria for better is, society could be envisioned, and thus a utopia formulated. Taking a step back from the history of critical theory, I want to state the connection that I researched between politics and critical pedagogy. Critics and proponents of critical theory alike postulate that critical scholarship exists on the left, or even the far left, of the political spectrum. That is, the intellectual tradition that prides itself on problematizing the status quo in society does not exist in a political vacuum. Rather, it is very much of the present political environment. It is fair to say, and I research many such examples, that critical theorists and their adjacent pedagogies do not deny their political objective, though a political agenda is not often stated explicitly. It is always a conscious choice to inculcate in a student one worldview or another. As a result, when educational curriculum is constituted from the canon of critical theory, the content of such pedagogy is politicized. To summarize this point, my research has elucidated the possibility that whether or not a teacher or author is forthcoming about the political objective in the texts they generate, if they utilize the lens of critical theory, the present discourse is potentially political in content. Throughout my research, I have identified several arguments against politicized education. I will now relate 3 of these dissenting opinions against what has become the status quo in disciplines such as sociology and anthropology. The arguments that I will present all concern the University of California system specifically. Now, I don't want to lose any of you when I introduce the concept of critical thinking in this slide, which is a different concept altogether from critical theory. Critical thinking has become somewhat of a buzzword in higher education. Teachers want their students to think critically about the subject at hand. A brief audit I conducted of several UCSD and departmental homepages in history, philosophy, music, communications, and the Division of Arts and Humanities in general all espouse critical thinking as a fundamental objective for these college majors. Corroborating the ubiquity of critical thinking at our university is a far-reaching study of American higher education conducted by Stanley Rothman in 1999, in which critical thinking has been identified as the paramount goal of the pedagogical side of the university. So, what is critical thinking? Robert Ennis called it the correct assessment of facts, and he gave detailed criteria for how this might be accomplished. The methodology Ennis refined over his career attempted to provide objective means by which data or arguments can be analyzed with adequate intellectual rigor. For example, Ennis wrote, "Arguments that depend on ambiguities are to be rejected." Elsewhere, I know, right? In anthropology, it's our bread and butter. So, elsewhere, he elaborates on how to deem whether an interlocutor or a text is reliable, screening the subject for impartiality or good judgment. Ennis and others, whether talking about critical thinking or intellectual rigor, have stated that the multiple pieces of evidence and multiple viewpoints might strengthen an academic argument. The problem, then, with political arguments is the lack of diversity of viewpoints proposed to students in the pedagogical construction of reality. Detractors of politicized education worry that students are not taught to think critically about issues because they are not asked to weigh disparate arguments from a variety of stakeholders. Moreover, a fundamental exercise in critical thought might involve determining an ideologue's motives or credibility. If students are not tasked with carefully evaluating the originators of certain arguments, they are not practicing critical thinking to its fullest capacity. The authors of the study worry that if a pedagogue is invested in formulating a utopian vision of society in line with the core tenets of critical theory, they are not asking students to think, but rather to believe. My research included examples of classrooms dealing with anti-racist pedagogies, in which the taboo of racist viewpoints restricts the diversity of perspectives present in the pedagogical environment. Because students were not asked to compare and weigh the arguments of all stakeholders in a society struggling to overcome racism, students were essentially asked to believe in the perspective of a narrow population, or a potentially narrow population. The conclusion drawn from such non-impartial testimonies is that racism is bad. Of course, it goes without saying that I am problematizing the intellectual process and not the conclusion of such an example. The second argument against politicized pedagogy concerns how curricular content is fabricated. Critics argue that because faculty members are overrepresented on the left of the political spectrum, not only radical, but unacademic themes prevail at the University of California. Ostensibly, these problems manifest themselves in the form of extreme ideologies and emotionally charged journalistic texts that lack intellectual rigor. First, I'll talk about radical themes as being detrimental to education. One study conducted in 2002 looked at UCSD's Doc 3 curriculum and complained that it had elements of a Marxist polemic. The report, conducted by the conservative National Association of Scholars, argued that Doc 3 exemplified pedagogy that inculcated a homogeneous political viewpoint without valid counterarguments. In this particular example, the study criticized the Doc 3 curriculum for being subversive of traditional gender dynamics in American households, and it didn't evidently provide substantial evidence for this being so. The study also notes that many UC faculty identify as Marxist, despite this identification being all but vilified in mainstream consciousness. Pretty heavy stuff. Given the statistical strength of left-wing and far-left faculty in the UC social science departments, radical themes like these go unchecked and undisputed. Consequently, students are tasked with carefully considering Students are not tasked with carefully considering an array of objectively proposed arguments, but rather are cajoled into formulating facile responses that agree with the professor's own, in this case, radical ideology. My next point concerns which readings come to characterize college reading lists in the social sciences. Because it is alleged that most or all faculty agree with one another on fundamental political issues, professors are complicit in allowing privately held political beliefs a primary focus in class. Dissenting opinions from the political right take issue with the centrality of themes such as anti-capitalism, illegal immigration, radical environmentalism, and others. Furthermore, they problematize the presentation of these themes in journalistic mediums or in memoirs. They contend that such emotionally charged curriculums override students' incentive to think critically about what is being taught, especially when professors encourage agreement rather than parsimonious analysis. The third argument concerns laws that are designed to protect political neutrality in the public settings. Central to the argument is the university's moral and legal obligations as a publicly funded, nonpartisan entity. The study of the University of California system by the National Association of Scholars references both the Federal Hatch Act and California's government code. These pieces of legislation stipulate what public servants are allowed to do and say. While the laws concern the political wherewithal of elected officials and their ability to delegate responsibilities to their appointees, it makes no mention of how university faculties fit into this dynamic. The study extrapolates on the basis of its own judgment the legislation's implications to the UC system. Consequently, one issue raised by the study is the misappropriation of funds. In the view of the study's authors, the University of California uses funds appropriated to teach critical thinking and instead uses them to task pedagogues with political missionary. In the context of a discussion about the history of political bias in education, the study's contention boils down to their taking issue with the replacement of critical thinking with critical theory. In their view, these two concepts are mutually exclusive. To really drive home their point, the study compares the use of classroom time for an instructor's political beliefs with theft. Because the existence of classroom time depends on the expenditure of public resources, instruction should be devoted to issues of public concern. However, when an instructor uses classroom time for political, or as they say, private purposes, the instructor is stealing public resources. In sum, what the study argues for is a version of reality in which the University of California utilizes tax revenue in bad faith, purporting one purpose and using it for another. In making this argument, the authors of the study compress the concept of politics into a small and discrete category, in which pedagogues can consciously enter into and exit at their choosing. At other points in the study, however, the study conceptualizes politics as pervading all discourse, such as equating a memoir in the Doc 3 curriculum as a Marxist polemic, despite it only being so in the broadest possible definition of Marxist. Furthermore, the criteria for matters of public versus private concern require further elaboration. Such an opposition begs the question of what stringent criteria the authors relied upon in relegating any matter remotely political as inappropriate for classroom discussion. The matter and ubiquity of political science departments comes to mind. I wonder if the authors of the study would deem a bias for democracy over totalitarianism as grounds for dismissing such scholarship from public discourse. Counterarguments against this study. As a component of my research, I have also analyzed critical discourses within UCSD's anthropology curriculum that I hypothesized were one-sided to a detrimental degree. Processing these observations has been complex. For one thing, complaints often arrive in the form of a generalization based off of examples of limited breadth. It is one thing to perceive a singular incidence of politicized education as being detrimental to critical thinking, but another thing to extrapolate from that example a criticism of all critical pedagogy. How do we begin to draw conclusions about higher education without more structured and quantitative studies? Using my own analysis, I will propose several refutations against the arguments raised by the National Association of Scholars. The study that I spent time describing to you used student testimonies as data. Many of the complaints registered were found on websites akin to Rate My Professor, where motivated students wrote in about unpleasant classroom experiences. Ironically, the study lamenting the erosion of critical thinking fell into the biased sample fallacy. More fundamentally, the study took issue with what it perceived as pervasive bias among educators, but it did not differentiate between bias in one's inquiry and bias in one's research and methodology. It is difficult to avoid folding in our own personal biases in whatever we create. Just as all of us in the honors thesis cohort chose our research topics because of personal preferences towards a particular topic, scholars choose what to investigate for privately held reasons. It's just how it is. But the bias in choosing a question does not necessarily correlate with the bias in methodology. The fact that the faculty can be described as politically homogeneous, or nearly so, does not mean that their research is flawed, or that their pedagogical habits are not intellectually rigorous. A little sample preview. To conclude, though, my hypothesis was not confirmed. That is to say, politically biased pedagogy is not definitively detrimental to education. Like it or not, critical theory and its political discursive elements are here to stay in contemporary academic settings. So everyone take a sigh of relief. Although it is fair to say that critical pedagogy can be badly taught, such as in instances where classrooms become de facto political rallies, discrete examples of bad teaching are not necessarily reflective of the politically affected pedagogy as a whole. While I started out believing that politicized pedagogy is harmful to the quality of education, I no longer believe that is the case. What I began to realize is that all texts stake out a particular position, and given the broad and encompassing nature of politics, all texts are politicized in some way. However, the fact that researchers might carry with them a political perspective does not always infringe on the rigor with which the scientific method is employed. Nor does a teacher who feels passionately about a political question necessarily ask their students to blindly believe them. At a basic level, I had to differentiate between the content and the execution of critical pedagogy. To conclude, I believe my hypothesis was flawed on the grounds that it was too simplistic of a question to ask a complex and nuanced topic. Rather than ask if politics and education are detrimental, I could have investigated how political questions shape the inquiry of scholars in the critical hermeneutic tradition. Of course, it goes without saying that the research I am sharing with all of you today was necessary in my stepping closer towards a more complete understanding of the dynamics between politics and pedagogy. Very briefly, I would like to give a heartfelt thanks to Professor Katerina Semendeferi for driving me to continuously strive for clarity and precision, precision throughout the project. In addition, thank you, Professor Jonathan Friedman, for your mentorship, not only on this research project, but throughout my time here at UCSD. You have undoubtedly shaped the course of my inquiry as I navigated through unknown and dangerous intellectual territories. Thank you, Catherine Creeley, our anthropology librarian, for your consultations and the library resources available to us. Thanks to my honors thesis cohort. Your friendship and camaraderie this year were what kept me going. And a special thank you to my wife, Victoria, for your support, and to my 9-month-old son, Dolph, who did not necessarily facilitate my research, but was an inspiration nonetheless. Open the floor to questions if any folks have any. Professor Ankins.
Charles, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So you cite Ennis's argument that political pedagogy can't be impartial, and the rejoinder to that from those who believe that politics permeates everything and not just is relegated to horseback riding.
Right.
Is that there is no such thing as impartial scholarship. There is no, and I wonder, you trace this trajectory of your own approach to these issues and leave us with a broken hypothesis. What's your next hypothesis? Is there a space, a pedagogical space that is not political?
Right. So
I don't know if those are the same question.
right. Yeah. Let me think about that for a moment. So what Professor Hankins is proposing, scholars like Robert Ennis have essentially laid out criteria by which we identify what is critical thinking or good judgment, stuff like that. And in that definition, other scholars have said that critical pedagogy does not qualify as kind of critical thinking or doesn't use good judgment. So I would say in answer to your question, I think that opposition isn't really helpful because I've definitely experienced ways in which a politically motivated professor has posed questions in a very rigorous and parsimonious manner in a way that a student could look at multiple viewpoints and really come to what I think is a good reflection of reality. Yes?
Sort of a thought experiment. Do you think that, even though your focus is on social sciences, do you think that you could imagine a kind of parallel series of steps and analysis in the biological sciences?
With regard to, like...
Political, motivated,
right.
non-impartiality, ways of interpreting data.
Sure. So the question is, can we find a parallel between the way that the scholars in the social sciences investigate what they're analyzing and what people in the STEM sciences, how they might go about it? I would say that if we look at politics as this really broad category encompassing all human interactions, probably people in the STEM sciences ask questions and they hope the result is going to make them a lot of money, right? Because if they cure cancer, that's going to be really good for them. So I think that there is a parallel between these two methodologies, just that everyone has a certain stake, whatever it may be, in asking questions. Anything else? If not, thank you so much.
Okay, congratulations. It was very, very well done. I'm very proud of you. Okay, let's now move to the last part of today's event, which is to go over our awards and congratulations and so forth. So I would like to, in this part of the event, recognize our exceptional students in anthropology. And I would like to start, of course, with amazing students we had in the Honors Studies program this year. We had a lot of fun. We learned from each other. It was just a blast being with you guys and a pleasure to see the outcome today. We have several students who participated in the Honors Studies program this year, and all of them are going to get honors in anthropology, and their names are there. And I would like to call each one of you to join me here and get your special cord. This cord was an idea of my honors group from last year. It includes 3 colors, represent the 3 concentrations in anthropology. So I would like to call each one of you, for those of you who are in the room, to get your cord and your certificate. So I'd like to start with Hannah Alford. So probably you want to come on this side so that we can capture you in the video. And Terence, I will probably need your help to enlarge my screen again here while I do this. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
And this is for you. Great job, Hannah. Thank you. Next is Kathleen Ambrosino. Cherise Blanchard, I know she is in the field right now, so congratulations. Erica D'Andrea. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And Charles Dorfman. For you. And Joy Guerrero. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Isabel Hermsmeyer. Congratulations, Kaylee. Grinea Irvine. Congratulations, Grinea. Take care. Clifford Liu. And Terence Leva. And Alexis Reed. Okay, so in our department we have 3 awards every year, one in each of the 3 concentrations that we have, and I would like to start with the Washburn Award for Excellence in Biological Anthropology. Sherwood Washburn was a major figure in biological anthropology and early advocate of field study in the study of comparative primate behavior, and an important student of extinct hominids, understood through the functional study of comparative primate anatomy. We gave the award over the years, starting with 1996, and I would like to announce this year's award that goes to Isabel Let me say a few things about Isabel. Isabel is an amazing student. She is a double major in biological anthropology and in biology, evolution, behavior, and ecology. She is also a minor in Chinese studies. Isabel came to UCSD as a transfer student from Miracosta College. She has been working through college, and she is planning to move on to graduate school, so she will be spending part of her next year applying to graduate schools. I would like to congratulate you and give you this framed certificate on behalf of our department and a gift card for the bookstore from our department. Congratulations, Isabel. We have the Robert McAdams Award for Excellence in Archaeology. McAdams is an adjunct member of our faculty here at UCSD. He is a major comparative archaeologist of early state formation and a pioneer in the study of broad regional systems. In previous years, we gave the award to students all the way back to 1995, and I would like to announce this year's awardee, Terence Levano. So I would like to say a few words about Terence, who is also an amazing student of ours. Terence received 2 degrees from Santa Monica College. He is also a transfer student. He got an associate degree with high honors in general science and an associate degree with high honors in social and behavioral science. He was in junior college academic all-state cross-country team in the fall of 2012 and 2013. He is an athlete, a competitive athlete. At UCSD, he is in the varsity cross-country and track. He has been working at Birch Aquarium during the entire course of his senior thesis program this past year. And he has all kinds of distinctions, both academic and athletic, during his stay at UCSD, all kinds of things that I don't think I can actually spell out properly for you in the different athletic divisions at the CCAA and so forth. It's pretty amazing. So Terence, congratulations. Very so congrats. The A. Irving Hallowell Award is given for excellence in sociocultural anthropology. Hallowell was a cultural anthropologist, one of the founders of the field of culture and personality, and a pioneer in the cross-cultural use of psychological testing. Starting with 1985, we award this distinction to a student, and this year's award goes to Charles Dorfan and Alexis Reed, because they're both outstanding and it was impossible to choose one over the other. So, so let me start with, I don't know, Alex, you're ahead, so let me start with you. Alexis is pretty amazing. She really is. So she has been part of the undergraduate research program, a McNair Scholar. She conducted 2 different research studies, one Japanese American identity and another one on why American college students are identifying with anime characters. Alexis is the first in her family to graduate from a 4-year institution and also get accepted to graduate school, and she has, so listen to this. The graduate schools she was already accepted are SOAS, the University of London, for a master's in Japanese studies, and where she has committed to actually go. The University of San Francisco in an MA in Asian Pacific Studies, and Binghamton for a PhD in anthropology. Alexis is also a transfer student. She came to us from Miracosta College, and in her time not doing academics, she managed to fit in 30 hours working every week to make it through college. So Alexis, here is your Franco board. So now you'll see why it was so hard to choose any one over the other here, because Charles also is amazing. He has done 2 quarters of the faculty mentor program with Professors Friedman and Professor Hankins on Lithuanian transnational immigration. He has been part of the UC Scholars Program, a funded research opportunity to explore gender performance among male cyclists with Professor Brenner. He was a 3-time recipient of Provost Honors from Marshall College. He is a Marshall College honors student based on his GPA. And on the personal biography side of things, Charles is also a transfer student from San Jose City College. has worked in bicycle shops throughout college, and had a baby, as you can hear and see, in his senior year. Charles' future plans include to take a year off to prepare applications for law school and work and help with childcare while her wife completes her master's in accountancy. Congratulations, Charles. And that's a little gift for the bookstore.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I would like to go over the list of the amazing students we have in other dimensions too. We have a program that we call Ambassadors of Anthropology, and this year's group designed this T-shirt that you see there on the board, and actually the department paid for it, so each one of these students are going to take this T-shirt with them that they designed and ordered and made. The Ambassadors of Anthropology have done several outreach events in the course of the year. Some of these events were to talk to students about anthropology at UCSD on campus, and an example of that is seen on the board. We did outreach events to community colleges in the region, including this one in Miracosta College this spring. And in addition to the ambassadors, I would like to acknowledge the fact that we have amazing students that run our Anthro Club. The Anthro Club is a student-based organization that does a lot of activities and events. And you see on the board members, the president, Isabel Hermsmeyer, vice president, Grace O'Connell, treasurer, Joy Guerrero, and events coordinator, Janet Lee. Congratulations, you guys, for doing this. It's amazing, and we really, really appreciate it. The Anthro Club participated also in the Triton and Transfer Days here at UCSD this spring, 2016. And you see a member of the club here as well, along with the exhibits that students did there. And the Ambassadors of Anthropology also participated in those events. Other outreach events that the Anthro Club and the Ambassadors did this year was to invite Miramar College and Palomar College here to campus. Anthropology hosted colleagues and students from those colleges. And so we thank the Anthro Club and the Ambassadors again for doing that. This is very, very important. I would like to shift to something that we started doing in 2014, and it is related to my own lab, the lab of human comparative neuroanatomy, and the Lisa Stefanacci Award. Lisa was an expert on the neural underpinnings of emotional regulation, social cognition, and the primate limbic system. She had joined my lab in the Department of Anthropology as a project scientist in 2011. She was a fierce advocate for women in science. She mentored generously students in anthropology and beyond. The award honors personal integrity and excellence in scientific inquiry, practice, and ethics. We gave the award in 2014 to Chelsea Brown, and Chelsea is in the PhD program at the University of California in Santa Barbara right now. She was a double major in neuroscience and biological anthropology, working in my lab, and she's doing great at UC Santa Barbara, moving on with her studies. In 2015, we had Valerie Jude and Haley Orphant receive the award. They're both working right now and planning to apply to graduate schools next year. And they are going to be the presenters of this year's award, as you will see in the little video clip I have next for you.
Hi, I'm Haley. And I'm Valerie Judd. We graduated last year and were the 2015 recipients of the Lisa Stefanacci Award.
And this year we are honored to introduce
the 2016 recipient of the Lisa Stefanacci Award for Excellence in Human Comparative Neuroanatomy, Kimberly Groninger. Congratulations, Kim! Thank
you. Kimberly, congratulations. She is in the East Coast attending her brother's graduation right now, but I do have your certificate for you when you get home. So, congratulations again. I should probably also have mentioned that Kimberly is a double major in physiology and neuroscience and in biological anthropology, working in my lab. And she was already accepted in the master's program in the Division of Biology starting next year, and she will be working with me on her master's. So, all right. Yes, and these are pictures from the awardees over the years, Chelsea, Val, Haley, and Kimberly. Moving on, our alumni. Our alumni are in touch with us, and they keep sending us their news, and we love it. We would love to have more of that happening over the next year. I would like to bring up last year's cohort. We had in this very same place another event a year ago with our honors class of 2015. So where are they now? I would like to answer that question by letting them address that themselves.
Huh. What's this? It's got a smell. Picking up sea salt, the faint odor of the halls of the second oldest university in the English-speaking world. Yep. And the smell of the Irving A. Hallowell Cultural Anthropology Award winner from the UCSD Anthropology Department in 2015. This must come from Hans Hubbard. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I'm Jared Eckingren. I am class of 2015, and it's great to see you all there. I'm sure you're very excited. I'm sure you're very nervous. I was sitting in your seats just a year ago, and I can't believe it's only been a year, but I'm jealous because you guys are a part of something really great, and I wish I could be there with you. But since I'm not, I guess I'll catch you up on what I've been doing. Since I graduated last year, I've come here to New York City, where I am pursuing, or I just finished my first year in a master's program for public health at Columbia University, where I'm studying the overlapping areas of mental health, drug policy, and criminal justice reform. And I was just hired on by the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene as a policy intern to work in their Bureau of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention. So I'm very excited, and it's been a very busy year since I left San Diego. That's what's been up with me. For you guys, I just want to say thank you to Katerina for all that you do. You're amazing. Thank you to the UCSD faculty and staff there for making such a great experience for us all. And to the students, like I said, I'm real jealous because you're part of a great tradition that I know I've really enjoyed. And it's been great to see you all. And I wish you nothing but luck in your future. And this thing, I think I'm going to pass this on to my good friend Megan. All right. See you later.
Thanks, Jared. Well, hello, UCSD Anthropology cohort of 2016. I want to wish you all luck on your presentations today. I remember that the presentations last year were one of my favorite moments at UCSD. So best of luck to all of you. I'm excited to read any theses that you want to share with me. Quick updates I was asked to give. I'm currently at the University of Chicago, about to graduate with my MA in just a little under a month. and I'll be starting my PhD at Cornell in the fall. So I'm very excited and looking forward to continue on in anthropology. And all the best of luck to you guys, and whether or not you'll be going on to graduate school or going into work, I hope that anthropology has given you the solid foundation that you hoped it would. And feel free to contact me any point of time, and I'm happy to chat. All right, over to you, Vanessa.
2016 honors thesis cohort and the rest of the Ant department at UCSD. After graduation, I started an MA program at the University of Colorado, Boulder, and I'm currently in Oaxaca, Mexico, finishing up 4 months of excavation and lab work. I'm looking forward to going home and starting work on my master's thesis with the data collected from the field. I'd like to say thank you to everyone at UCSD, and I wish all the best to this year's senior class in whatever direction you choose to take. Adios.
All right, thank you, Vanessa. I'm Sarah Mays. I'm part of the anthropology thesis group from last year. So I was in the same position you are in now, saying that good luck on your presentations. After graduation, I decided to take a year to work, and now I'm expecting to go to University of Chicago this fall for the MAPS program. And that said, good luck once again, and I'll pass this airplane on.
Hello everyone, my name is Kelsey, and I completed my senior thesis with Professor Schrodinger last year. Unlike most of my colleagues, I decided to take the last year to myself, and I traveled to Greece and South Korea and China. But this year, I will be starting my master's in criminal justice and criminology at San Diego State University starting this fall. And while this program is not in anthropology, I still could not be more grateful for the time that I had at UCSD and for the honors cohort that became my family. So no matter what decision you guys start choosing in your future, we wish you the best in your presentations and best of luck after graduation. So from our family to yours, good luck.
Thank you so much, my honors class of 2015. The little airplane was flying east all the way west, if you notice. So all these great graduate programs, all the way from Cambridge all the way here. So, all right, I have a few more slides, so please bear with me for a few more minutes. We heard from a couple of our honor students from 2014. This is really brief.
Hello everyone, my name is Jessica and I graduated with the 2014 class doing the sociocultural concentration. After graduating, I took a year off and worked in the mental health field doing case management, and now I'm still doing that, and then part-time I'm getting my master's in social work from Loma Linda University in the Inland Empire. So if any of you are interested in that, contact Katerina and get in touch with me and I can tell you all about it. But in any case, sorry I'm not there, but I wish I could be. I loved the program. I had so much fun, and I hope you're all enjoying it too. In any case, hello everyone.
Hello, and congratulations to all of you in this year's Anthropology Honors Program. My name is Nicholas Johnson. I am a graduate from 2014, and I got my degree in sociocultural anthropology. So first off, I want to take a second to celebrate this moment with you. It's really exciting to be able to present your research after a year of working on this honors thesis, as well as attend all these events, celebrating the huge accomplishment at the end of your undergraduate career. As for me, after graduating at UC San Diego, I moved to Madrid, Spain, where currently I'm teaching English at a bilingual high school. And I'm really excited, but starting in August, I will actually be moving to Atlanta, Georgia, where I will be pursuing a PhD in cultural anthropology at Emory University. So once again, I want to wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors. And I know this is a very exciting time, and I know you're going to go on and do some great things. And so, yeah, celebrate this accomplishment and do a bunch of cool things moving forward.
Thank you, Nick and Jess. Thank you very much. And we have Nikki from 2013, and she sent us this little bit of paper.
Hello, 2016 Anthro alumni. I'm Nikki Falvey. I'm a 2013 Anthro Honors Thesis alumnus, and my thesis was on obsidian distribution in San Diego County under the advisorship of Professor Broswell. Now I'm working as a permanent full-time archaeologist with Helix Environmental Planning, a local cultural resources firm and environmental firm. I'm so excited for your graduation, that you've completed your thesis, and for all of the wonderful things you have to look forward to. Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki. Benjamin Rowland, Honors Class 2013, sent us this little note. I have been working as an archaeological specialist for state parks since last October, and I'm beginning a master's program with Project Dragonfly, a collaboration between Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and participating institutions associated with the AZA. The program is targeted towards getting students involved with conservation and conservation outreach. Things have been busy, but otherwise are going well. I hope that all is well at UCSD and wish all of the students in the 2016 cohort the best. Thank you very much, Ben. I have a special note from someone who graduated a long time ago, Ms. Laura Richter, Honors Class of 1980. On the value of an education in anthropology. I don't believe there was any formal presentation of undergraduate honors research papers the year that I completed the honors program. 1980, The Frozen Chosen, a study of the thawing of the Episcopal Church with advisor Dr. Ted Schwartz. But what a thrilling experience it was for me to be able to do a 2-year field study with the guidance from Dr. Schwartz. Please convey my very best wishes to him. Dr. Shirley Strom played a major role in my decision to pursue both my undergraduate and graduate degrees in anthropology. Her challenging curriculum on paradigms and primates inspired me to pursue a research position at the Gorilla Foundation, teaching sign language to gorillas Coco and Michael. Shirley emboldens her students to question conventional thinking, and I have continued to benefit from that modeling through the decades. After attending graduate school at Stanford, I have continued to apply perspectives in human culture to my 20-year career in clinical social work. I most certainly am better equipped to evaluate the multidimensional stressors impacting clients from a wide spectrum of backgrounds. In addition to Dr. Schwartz, Dr. Spiro and Levy impacted my understanding of the human experience, and that learning continues to inform my clinical approach. Thank you very much, Laura. So I would like now to finish up with acknowledging, and I would start with Ms. Kathy Creeley, our Anthropology UCSD librarian, who is retiring this year. Kathy has been an invaluable help for the training of our students and especially to our honors program. So I would like to thank you, Kathy, and wish you happy retirement. And I would also like to ask someone to say a few words about you, Professor Shirley Strom, if you can please join me here and share your thought on Kathy.
So, Kathy, we're sorry both that you're retiring and that you can't be here today, but we have a card and a gift to thank you for all your years of service to us in this department. Kathy came in 1982 as a result of a special set of grants that set up an Melanesian archive, which then became an Oceania archive. She was hired as the project coordinator, and she worked on that and expanded it over many years. It's now called the Tuzin Archive for Melanesian Anthropology, although its collections are wider than Melanesia. As the archive got organized, thanks to her hard effort and organization, she took on other projects at the library, including developing the collection for the social sciences. So I want to really thank her and take a few minutes to read a couple excerpts from letters, because Kathy is and was an amazing person and was of benefit to so many graduate students and faculty over so many years. So this is an excerpt from a letter about the archive. For many who carry out research in Oceania, and in Melanesia in particular, a visit to the Geisel Library is a pilgrimage. That means Kathy Creeley. Over the course of her career, her research and collecting has deeply enriched the study of Pacific societies, cultures, and their histories. Moreover, her unique position in the University of California, San Diego Library is something that she has created herself, a librarian who specializes in a single subject area and region and who maintains collections of international significance. The archive's stature as the depository of records for Melanesian research material moves ever higher due to Creeley's outreach work and the sterling reputation of the collection she has built. I'm not certain that many of you even know about this archive, because we no longer have people on the faculty who focus on that. But she's spearheaded initiatives to digitize significant parts of the collection and make the material widely available all over the world. Another thing she's done, which is really important to anthropology and the future of anthropology, is that she has continued to work on repatriating copies of materials and on giving duplicates of donated published materials to Pacific Island academic libraries. This aspect of her work has made her an important figure in the ongoing development of best practices concerning the relation between anthropological collections and the people whose community they concern. Kathy Creeley's career is an inspiring model for future researchers. And something a little more current is an excerpt from one of our current graduate students, Jordan Haig, who's in the field now in Melanesia. And I'd like to quote from here just as a way to give you an idea about Kathy's wonderful work with us in anthropology. And I'm quoting, "I witnessed countless occasions where she would selflessly assist both students and professors with detailed bibliographic information that only she could answer. Probably the most humbling thing about her is how loved she is within her own field, with virtually every anthropologist working in Oceania owing her incredible debts for her unceasing assistance. I can honestly say that I have learned more from Kathy Creeley than I have from anyone else. Her eye for detail and perfectionism is a model of good scholarship and the value of patient research. She did everything with a dedication few possess, one born of deepest respect for the work and lives of others. People like her, with her level of institutional knowledge, simply can't be replaced. She was a treasure at UCSD." So thank you very much, Kathy, and I hope you'll still be in the area and come back to visit us. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shirley. We have also another new program in our department that is originated in the graduate student population, a program that is called a mentor-protege program, the mentor being a graduate student, the protege being an undergraduate student interested in participating in such mentorship. I would like to just briefly acknowledge our amazing graduate students who offer their time to actually serve our undergraduates under this program. Thank you very much, Belinda, Brady, Elizabeth, Julia, Lily, Madeline, Matt, Rachel, Tashiana, Marianina, Kiri, Corina, and Samantha for your amazing work. We're really proud of you and we thank you very much. Nicole Daneshvar is our new undergraduate advisor with our department. She joined us last fall. Nicole is simply amazing. I don't know what I would have done without her this year. She joined in 2015 and came here from chemistry and biochemistry. Nicole received her MBA from San Diego State University and is SDSU's College of Business Administration's most outstanding MBA student. She did that after studying here at UCSD, where she got a BA in Communications with summa cum laude. So I would like to introduce her to our friends and alumni and to all of you who may have not met her so far, and thank her very much for all the help that she did and put this year, and I'm looking forward to working with her in the years to come. So thank you very much, Nicole. Of course, our entire program and this specific event would not have been really successful without many, many people, the chair and the faculty in the 3 concentrations, Professor Paul Goldstein, a close collaborator and the director of graduate studies in our department. I would like to say thank you to all of our lecturers in anthropology. They are amazing and they help us carry the teaching load, and I know that the students love them, so thank you very much. All of our graduate teaching assistants, all of our graduate students who serve as teaching assistants, I know how passionate you feel about anthropology, and we hear the best from our undergraduate students, so thank you very much. We have amazing staff, Nancy Lang and Deborah Kelly, our administrative assistants, Nikki Gee, our graduate program advisor. The social science computing facilities, I would like to especially thank David this year for all the help for making this happen. Kari and Rhea, our team at work and home, helping with video recording and video editing. And of course, all alumni who stay in touch and share their news with our department. You're very important. You make us proud, so please stay in touch, and thanks for everything you're sharing with us. My last slide is this one. We have an exciting group of students who are invited to join the Honor Studies program for next year, for the year 2016-17. I see some of you here in the room, and for everyone in this list, I'm looking very much forward to a lot of fun and a lot of hard work, but a lot of fun too next year. So I would like to congratulate everyone, and please, Nicole, join me in inviting everyone to the next step, which is having fun and eating, right?
Yes. Thank you very much, Katarina. Let's give her a round of applause. I just would like to say congratulations to all the students, faculty, and staff for an amazing year. It has been a pleasure working with all of you. And for those students who are graduating at the end of this year, we wish you the best in all your future endeavors. And the Anthropology Ambassadors have a special surprise for Professor Simondeferi.
Not surprises. Oh, you guys don't have to do this. Oh.
On behalf of our cohort, thank you so much for all of your mentorship and your help and being such a wonderful person.
Thank you so much. To wrestle me to take it away from me. So, okay, let's go and have some food and be merry. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.